In the Shadows of Hospitals, The Crimes of Charles Edmund Cullen. Welcome to The Most Evil, where we delve into the minds of history's most notorious serial killers. Today, we look at the horrifying story of Charles Edmund Cullen, a nurse who worked in hospitals throughout New Jersey and Pennsylvania, leaving a path of death and misery in his wake. Join us as we investigate the horrible actions of this infamous serial murderer. Charles Edmund Cullen was born on February 22, 1960, in West Orange, New Jersey. Cullen had a difficult childhood marked by instability and suffering. Cullen experienced various challenges as he grew up, including familial instability and personal hardships. Cullen's parents' marriage was apparently difficult, and he may have observed or experienced many types of conflict and instability in the home. These early events may have had a long-term influence on Cullen's mental and emotional health, influencing his worldview and psychological development. Cullen's life as a young man was still full of instability and change. He battled with personal troubles and unsuccessful relationships, which might have aggravated his psychological weaknesses. Despite these obstacles, Cullen chose a career in nursing, maybe lured to the sense of purpose and control that the profession provided. Cullen's admission into the nursing profession offered him with access to vulnerable populations, as well as possibilities to exercise power and control over others. However, his turbulent history and unresolved psychiatric concerns may have had an impact on his interactions with patients and co-workers, adding to a pattern of troubling conduct that would eventually lead to tragedy. Cullen worked at multiple institutions in New Jersey and Pennsylvania in the years preceding his murders, when he developed a reputation for eccentricity and social withdrawal. Colleagues regarded him as reclusive and isolated, having few personal contacts outside of the workplace. Despite these warning indicators, Cullen's co-workers and managers failed to realize the severity of his underlying disorder or act to avert the tragedies that followed. Cullen's crimes extended a decade, and he admitted to killing at least 40 patients. However, the exact number of deaths is unclear and might be much higher. Cullen's victims were typically elderly or critically ill patients, whom he targeted with lethal doses of medication, often administered under the guise of legitimate medical treatment. Charles Edmund Cullen's serial killer style was devious and planned, relying on his position as a nurse to commit horrible acts undiscovered for a lengthy period. His approach to murder was defined by deceit, manipulation, and the abuse of trust in hospital settings. Cullen's profession as a nurse gave him unrivaled access to vulnerable patients and powerful drugs. Working at hospitals around New Jersey and Pennsylvania, he had unrestricted access to drug trolleys, patient records, and medical supplies, allowing him to commit his crimes with ease. His technique of murdering was largely to provide deadly quantities of medication to his victims, frequently in the form of strong pharmaceuticals like insulin or digoxin. He was able to provide lethal amounts without raising suspicion by utilizing his expertise of medicines and medical regulations. He targeted those who were already at risk owing to their medical issues or elderly age. He preyed on those who were unlikely to survive or whose deaths might be attributed to natural reasons, reducing the risk of discovery. Cullen exploited his position of trust and power to deceive patients and colleagues, altering medical records and forging documents to cover up his misdeeds. He frequently projected himself as a loving and empathetic nurse, although hiding evil intents behind the surface. To hide his tracks and escape suspicion, Cullen would frequently tamper with medical equipment, change prescription dosages, or distort patient records to make his actions appear to be the consequence of natural causes. This purposeful obfuscation made it impossible for police to discover trends or link the killings to criminal activity. Despite concerns from co-workers and hospital executives, Cullen evaded detection for years by taking advantage of weaknesses in supervision and responsibility within healthcare institutions. His ability to blend in and evade detection enabled him to continue his murdering rampage with impunity. The investigation into Charles Cullen's crimes was extensive and diverse, covering various jurisdictions and involving a large number of police organizations. Despite the suspicions of co-workers and hospital management, Cullen's crimes went unnoticed for years, allowing him to continue his killing rampage with impunity. The apprehension of Charles Edmund Cullen marked the end of a lengthy inquiry into his evil deeds. Despite his efforts to avoid detection and conceal his tracks, Cullen's reign of terror was finally brought to an end by law enforcement and diligent detectives. Cullen's downfall began when suspicions about his behavior spread throughout the healthcare profession. Concerns were raised regarding the extremely high number of deaths that occurred under Cullen's supervision, forcing hospital management to conduct internal investigations and contact criminal police. As suspicions grew, officials initiated a thorough investigation into Cullen's actions, which included various institutions and jurisdictions. They carefully examined medical records, questioned colleagues and witnesses, and amassed evidence to create a case against him. Cullen was detained by police investigators at his house in Bethlehem Township, Pennsylvania, in December 2003, marking a watershed moment in the investigation. The arrest sent shockwaves across the neighborhood and drew national attention when the full scope of Cullen's actions became clear. During interrogation, Cullen originally denied any participation in his patients' deaths, but he later confessed, presenting investigators with horrifying information about his techniques and intentions. His confession, together with the pile of evidence obtained against him, cast little doubt about his guilt. Cullen's arrest and subsequent trial brought solace and vindication to the families of his victims, who had long sought justice for their loved ones. His trial in 2006 resulted in many convictions for murder and other offenses, and he received multiple life terms in jail. The tragedy of Charles Edmund Cullen stunned the country, raising severe concerns about patient safety and monitoring in hospital settings. Psychologists have conducted significant research on Cullen's case, looking at the psychological elements that pushed him to do such horrible murders, as well as the systemic flaws that allowed his crimes to go unnoticed for so long. As we wrap off our investigation into Charles Edmund Cullen's life and misdeeds, we are left with a frightening reminder of the risks presented by persons with access to vulnerable populations and the significance of diligent monitoring in healthcare settings. Cullen's legacy is a cautionary story about the deadly repercussions of unbridled authority, as well as the long-term impact his actions had on the lives of his victims and their loved ones.
If you found this video insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more content on true crime and psychological analysis. Remember to stay vigilant, and until next time, stay safe.